Thanks for staying with us. Joel Fitzgibbon is one of the brighter guys on the Labor side. He's been there a long time. He's been around. He knows what Australia thinks. A lost art in some parts of the Labor Party. This bloke's pretty good. Have a look at this. Welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, Richo.
Now, I've got to ask you, mate, I keep seeing Barnaby Joyce talking about what's happening in rural Australia. It must be pretty hard for you to get a run while he's around.
No, very easy to get a run because he keeps making mistakes and overinflating the things he has done in government. We've been 20 months under the Abbott government now, and we haven't had any agriculture policy in all of that time. They announced a couple of things in the budget. They were overstated. A big backflip from them today. I mean, how do you announce on budget night, Richo, that you're going to give a tax break for farmers that have just been through 3 years of drought, but a tax break that doesn't come into effect until sometime in 2017. I mean, wasn't Barnaby Joyce in the room when this was going on? I mean, they did back down today, finally, but what is going on that side?
But they wouldn't actually pay any tax anyway, would they? Tax breaks wouldn't help you much at the moment.
This is the other point, Richo. Look, they keep re-announcing these concessional loans to farmers. Now, the government's borrowing, the bond rate is between 2 and 3%, depending on whether it's 5 or 10 years, and they're lending this money out at between 3 and 4%. But farmers aren't taking up the option because, it doesn't help them basically. And then they put in these tax breaks, and as you point out, if you're not making money, you can't claim the tax break, and if you haven't got the cash to put up in the first place, well then again it's not much good to you. So we're not opposed to what they've done. We welcome any bit of assistance for farmers, but their drought policy has been hopeless.
Yeah, with the drought policy, it seems to me your biggest problem is your breeding stock are going, there's all sorts of strife. What you need is feed. You need feed, and you need it now. Now, are we doing anything at all about that in Australia?
No, state governments are starting to do a bit of that again. So they're doing some practical things, but Barnaby Joyce doesn't seem to fully appreciate or understand what these people are going through. I mean, he announces some grants to local government to do infrastructure, grants which are dwarfed by the money they've cut out of the FAGS grant for local government. They announced one good water infrastructure policy, which was a rebate scheme, but they put so little money towards it, it ran out in 5 minutes flat. They've got these concessional loans no one is interested in. He's switching drought money from some drought-affected states to other drought-affected states. It seems to be done on the basis of his mood for the day or the last person he spoke with. There's no real strategic plan here. But the worst part is, Richo, they keep re-announcing the value of these loans, not the cost to the government of the loan. So they say, well, theoretically we're going to be handing out, say, $280 million worth of loans over the next 4 years. That's the value of the loan, not the cost to the government. But in any case, the government's borrowing the money cheap, and farmers aren't taking it up anyway.
No, the only time I've been able to get out of the bush and talk to farmers, it's got a very low take-up rate, and that won't change. How bad is the drought in, say, an electorate like yours in Hunter? Now, you go right up the Hunter Valley, not just in Cessnock and Curry, you're way up the valley. How bad is it there?
That's right. I've got an electorate the AEC defines as rural, so I've got very large tracts of agricultural enterprise. We did have it very bad. It's not so bad now. We've been fortunate. We've had quite a bit of rain, but in places like Walgett and northwestern New South Wales in particular, Western Queensland, they have literally gone more than 3 years without rain. Now, Barnaby Joyce had one good policy, as I said, that I welcomed. He said, look, if you've got an opportunity to sink a bore or produce some other means of bringing some water to your property, then we will give you an upfront rebate. Do it, spend the money, and we will pay you back a fair proportion of that money. But the only thing that worked, he didn't properly fund. And farmers, in a rush to take this money, put in the application, spent the money in the full expectation that they would be rebated, and were told, at the end of the day, that all the money had been spent and they wouldn't be compensated. That is terrible policy.
How many of them are in that category, do you reckon?
Very hard hard to get the numbers out of this government, Richo, and I'll tell you what, on budget night it's very hard to get information these days. They are making an art form now of avoiding transparency on these issues. It was a state-by-state thing. The thing was implemented by each of the state government rural adjustment authorities. There would have been a large number of farmers who missed out, and he staggered the application, so you were able to apply in New South Wales first. And when all the New South Wales farmers started screaming, he took money off Queensland farmers to pay the New South Wales farmers. Well, you know, it's a funny way to run a government, Richo.
It certainly is, because in Queensland, because I've had a look at some of Western Queensland, it is an absolute disaster, isn't it?
Oh, it's terrible. It is just heartbreaking. And you know, Richo, what really frustrates me, and look, you can blame previous governments to an extent as well, although, you know, the former Labor government did a lot in land management programs, carbon farming initiative, land care, etc. But, you know, the real solution to drought is drought proofing, of course, and best practice land management programs. We need to draw more farmers into these best practice programs. Many are doing it, many are innovating, others aren't doing so well. We need to find a way of incentivising a greater uptake of participation in these new modern land management programs. And you know, we're waiting for this agricultural white paper that should have been out before Christmas, and it seems to be on the never, and I grow increasingly pessimistic about the quality of the quality we will see in the document when it finally arrives. But in its terms of reference, Richo, not one mention of climate change or sustainability in agriculture. The biggest
No, but they don't believe in climate change. I mean, Barnaby doesn't believe in it just for a start. Thinks it's a load of rubbish. So highly unlikely you'll see anything in his documents.
Well, my view is that the emission of climate change, changing climate, agricultural sustainability in the terms of reference was all about Barnaby Joyce avoiding admitting that our changing climate might be a problem for our farmers. It's just literally head in the sand type stuff.
This is what I get irritated about. The entire focus is in whether or not Campbell Parade at Bondi will be inundated by the sea. And it really shouldn't be. It seems to me that what climate change, where we really should be looking at change to rainfall patterns, because that seems to me there's plenty of evidence there already happening. And now we apparently don't even want to look at that anymore.
Well, now the Bureau of Meteorology is predicting another El Nino, as you know. So this thing's not going to get better anytime soon. So if Barnaby Joyce thinks he can just get to the next budget or the next election, bluffing his way through by pretending he's spending money, he's got a shock coming, because this is going to be ongoing for a long, long time.
Well, if there's an El Nino starting, as there definitely seems to be, there would appear to be no doubt, then you've probably got another 3 or 4 years of this.
Probably. And governments or any persuasion need to start coming to terms with that. We need a dual strategy. We need some strategic guidance from government, including some incentivisation into more sustainable land management programs, including crop rotation, the retention of moisture in soil type innovations and technologies, better practices more generally. But in the shorter term, face the reality that if we want these people to stay on the land, they'll need some help. I mean, you can prepare. We expect them, farmers, Richo, to prepare for maybe even up to a 1 in 50 year drought event. But you know what we're seeing now is looking more like a 1 in 100 year event. And it doesn't matter how good a farmer you are or how well you've embraced sustainable management practices. You can't prepare for that.
On a related issue, just before we go, one thing Barnaby Joyce was very strong on when he wasn't a minister, I must say, doesn't talk about it so much now. What about alienation of our prime agricultural land? I'm talking about CSG and mining. I'm talking about how much water the miners are taking and the potential damage CSG might do to it. Where do you stand on those things, Joel?
Well, Richo, as you know, in my electorate in the Hunter Valley, I've dealt with land management conflict or land use conflict all of my political life, and it's difficult, it's challenging, but I think in the 21st century we should have the wit to work out which projects can proceed without threatening our sustainable industries and which cannot. So I don't believe in these crazy blanket bans on CSG or on coal mining or whatever it might be. That they offer too much potential wealth and energy security for our country. So we should take all of these things on a case-by-case basis. I think you see very little of Barnaby because, unlike me, he's been very much and hard on one side of the debate up until when he became minister, and now, of course, finds it necessary to change his tune.
Well, now he's silent. You don't hear him on it anymore. I used to hear him all the time.
I shouldn't
but you don't
say
hear him now.
change his tune.
Yeah, well,
We'll stay quiet rather than change his tune is what I should have said.
I always say the mob will always work you out. The good thing about Fitzgibbon is he's worked the mob out. He's pretty damn good. I'll be back in just a moment with Keith Suter and we'll talk about ISIL and their gains in Syria and Iraq.